A very long time ago, there was a guy who was the most exciting player to watch in high school basketball, but we really haven't heard anything about this guy in a long time. So, what happened to him? Sometimes if you're a star in high school basketball, you don't wind up being a star later in your basketball career. And in this story, this is definitely the case. Aquille Carr. If you've been watching YouTube for a while, you more than likely have heard about this guy. Now, Aquille Carr was only 5'6", but man, this guy was a walking bucket. And around 7 to 8 and even 9 years ago, he was the biggest thing on YouTube for basketball. So, where is this guy now? And to get into the story, you already know we gotta throw it all the way back to where things started. September 28, 1993. This is when this star was born. Aquille Carr is actually a native of Baltimore, and as he was growing up, even though he was smaller than his opponents, he was still known for his handles and athletic ability. As he was growing up and all throughout middle school, he was still getting buckets even though he was smaller than his competition. And going into his freshman year of high school, he wound up being on the varsity team and producing right away. He played his high school ball for Patterson High School, and in his freshman season, he put on a show every night. He averaged 25.5 points per game, 8 assists, and over 5 steals per game. The points and assists are impressive themselves, but over 5 steals? That's absurd. And it gets even crazier, so hold on, we're just getting started. In his sophomore season, he had a game where he scored 57 points. And in that game, he had 7 3-pointers, so he could also shoot the ball. Also, to go along with that game, he wound up leading his school to their best record ever of 25-2. And if you thought his stats for his freshman year were crazy, listen to these. For his sophomore season, he averaged 31.3 points per game. 31.3, let that sink in. And remember, he was only 5'6". He also pitched in 5.6 assists and 4.5 steals. So once again, he was doing it on the defensive side of the ball as well. And I think that's what stood out the most about this guy. In just 2 years at his high school, he already scored over 1,000 points. And to make things even better, on April 6th in 2011, ESPN named him the High School Player of the Week. Before we go any farther, we just gotta stop and realize this kid was a baller. And during his junior year, he finally led his team to the state championship where he scored 28 points and had another 8 assist game. During his junior year, he started getting so much hype that even news reporters were calling him a must-see phenomenon. So many people started to come see this guy play, they had to relocate and play their games at a bigger gym. And all throughout his high school career, he received many nicknames, but his most notable one was the Crime Stopper. And they wound up calling him this for his alleged effect on the city's crime rate. And if you don't understand that, just let me explain that for y'all. Well, actually, I'm gonna let the head coach explain it for y'all. His head coach basically said, the crime in East Baltimore probably goes down during our games. So yeah, that's the Crime Stopper nickname. Anyways, let's continue on with our story. At this point in time, he had many videos on YouTube go completely viral and get over millions of views. But in his junior year also, this is where our story takes a little turn. By his junior year, even though he was only 5'6", he was recorded to have a 48-inch vertical. A 48-inch vertical is completely insane. His high school coach even went on to say this about him. I haven't seen anyone who can stay with him. Pound for pound, inch for inch, he's the best player in the country. But during his junior year, Carr played on the US junior team that went over to play in a tournament in Italy. And he wound up leading this team to the gold medal and averaged 40 points per game. And after he scored 45 points in one game, the Italian fans carried him off the court. So I think it's safe to say, everybody loved this kid. And shortly after the tournament, an Italian team made him an offer. They wound up offering him a $750,000 contract. And at the time, this was the largest contract ever offered by a European club to a high school player before he graduated. But ultimately, and long story short, Carr declined the offer and returned to school. Even though all throughout his high school career things seemed great for this guy, he did have one slip up. In 2012, he was arrested for a domestic assault charge. And in this charge, he was accused of throwing his former girlfriend on the ground and kicking and punching her. And when he was put in jail, he was held on a $50,000 bond. And even though this seemed like a very serious offense, nothing really came out of it. And long story short, he wound up getting out and got to continue on with his basketball career. And of course, I'm sure it had to do something with he was a basketball star around his hometown, but hey, that's all we can assume. We really don't know what happened. When Carr wound up returning to his high school, there was some speculation that he would be unable to play because he was going to turn 19 before the start of the season. So with all that speculation, he wound up transferring to a series of different prep schools. And in January in 2012, he actually committed to Seton Hall. But he committed, he never signed, so it wasn't a sure deal that he was going to go. And matter of fact, he never went. He wound up deciding to go play professional basketball in China. But our story does not stop there. On November 1st in 2013, Carr was drafted by the Delaware 87ers in the 3rd round of the 2013 D-League draft. And on November 23rd in 2013, in his debut game, he scored 15 points and pitched in 2 assists, so he was showing that he could still play. However, his team thought otherwise and didn't see too much potential in him. On January 3rd in 2014, he was released by his team, and apparently he asked to be released because he wasn't getting enough playing time. Either way, he was released. Flash forward in time, on April 20th in 2014, he announced he was going to put his name in the 2014 NBA draft. But unfortunately for him, he wound up going undrafted. But we continue on with our story. On September 9th in 2014, he signed a 1-year deal with the St. John Millrats of the Canadian National Basketball League. The St. John Millrats, what a name. However, his career just saw more troubles. He wound up being suspended not once but twice during the season and took his anger out during games. And his team saw this and noticed it and released him on December 13th in 2014. Even though it sounded bad, in 9 games he averaged 12.9 points per game and 3.4 assists. Those are pretty good numbers. And after that, it really looked like his career was gone and nobody heard anything about this guy for a long time. But however, 2 years later, in January of 2016, his name popped up once again. And Carr wound up signing with the Baltimore Hawks of the American Basketball Association. And remember, Baltimore's where he grew up, so this makes a lot of sense. This, however, was not too great for him either, and he wound up moving on once again. In November of 2017, Carr signed with some team out of the Cryptid North League called Gurney. I really couldn't find out too much about this team, but from all the articles I read, it wasn't good for him either there. And once again, he took a long break and disappearance from basketball. But flash forward in time another 2 years, in 2019 he made his return once again. Ironically, he returned to the Baltimore Hawks, yes, a team he signed with in January of 2016. And before I say anything else, man, what a career this guy has had. He just keeps going back and forth between teams. And in 2019 for the Baltimore Hawks, he had a pretty solid season. I mean, compared to the other seasons he's had with the other recent teams he's been with, it was his best up to date. And in this season, he even had a franchise best 65 points in 1 game. I don't care what you guys say, if you put up 65 points, I don't care if it's church league, that's balling out. And up until this day, and when I'm making this video, that is the last we have heard about Aquille Carr. And what can I say besides just, wow man, this guy has had an unbelievable and just crazy basketball journey. He was arguably one of the best and most exciting high school basketball players to watch at the time. And the numbers he was putting up was just absurd. Not only that, he was offered $750,000 when he was still in high school. That's insane. Aquille Carr has had one insane of a basketball journey. He went from a basketball star who was offered $750,000 in high school to a guy that basically just fell off the map. And he's still trying and pursuing his basketball career. But is it too late? But hey man, with all this being said, that's about gonna wrap up this video. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you guys learned something. If you are new to the channel, what are you doing? Hit that subscribe button and leave a like for more. And as always, let's be great. I'm out, y'all. Peace.